dive into the gripping saga of Lisa Bennett, a young American fighting to survive on the streets of Abu Dhabi. When she captures the heart of the billionaire and irresistibly handsome Sheikh Khalid Al-Mansour, what begins as an offer to become. His dancer turns into a dangerous game when Khalid uncovers her undocumented status and blackmails her into becoming his ninth wife. Trapped in a palace of luxury, Lisa captivates the Sheikh with her spellbinding tales of 1001 nights while plotting a daring escape. But fate has other plans. A forbidden love ignites, and the arrival of an heir changes everything. Can Lisa claim her freedom without losing her heart? The desert sun hung high over Abu Dhabi, casting a relentless heat that shimmered off the city's glass towers and marble facades. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of sand and exhaust, a reminder of the vast desert that encircled this oasis of wealth. Lisa Bennett, a 22-year-old American with chestnut hair tied in a loose ponytail and eyes that mirrored the turquoise of the Persian Gulf, trudged along Sheikh Zayed Road, her sneakers, once white but now stained with the dust of months, scraped against the pristine pavement. A tattered backpack hung from her shoulder, containing everything she owned: a change of clothes, a cracked phone, and a crumpled photo of her family back in Ohio. Her stomach growled, a sharp pang that reminded her she hadn't eaten since the previous night when she'd salvaged a half-eaten pita from a cafe's dumpster. 6 months ago, Lisa had arrived in Abu Dhabi with stars in her eyes, chasing a promise of a better life. A job offer as a waitress in a 5-star hotel had seemed like her ticket out of the dead end. Life she'd known in her small hometown. Her parents, drowning in medical debt after her father's heart surgery, had pinned their hopes on her. But the agency that lured her here was a scam, vanishing with her savings and leaving her stranded in a foreign land. Without a visa, she was undocumented, a shadow in a city of dazzling light. She survived on odd jobs, cleaning houses, washing dishes in back alley restaurants, always looking over her shoulder for immigration officers who could deport her in an instant. Every day was a tightrope walk, and she was running out of balance. Lisa paused at a busy intersection, wiping sweat from her brow with the back of her hand. Her blue tank top clung to her skin, and her jeans, frayed at the hems, felt like a second skin in the oppressive heat. Across the street, a display of silk scarves in a boutique window caught her eye. Their colors, emerald, sapphire, crimson, danced. In the sunlight, a stark contrast to the muted tones of her life. She allowed herself a moment to imagine owning one, wrapping it around her shoulders, feeling like she belonged in this city of extravagance. But the fantasy dissolved as quickly as it came. She couldn't afford dreams, not when she hadn't paid rent for the cramped room she shared with 3 other women, all in similarly desperate straits. Abu Dhabi was a city of contrasts, where ancient Bedouin traditions coexisted with futuristic skyscrapers, where billionaires dined in restaurants floating above the clouds while people like Lisa scraped by in the shadows. She watched as a group of women in flowing black abayas stepped out of a designer store, their laughter light and carefree. They climbed into a sleek SUV, their driver holding the door with a practiced bow. Lisa envied their ease, their sense of belonging. She felt like an outsider, her pale skin and worn clothes marking her as someone who didn't fit in this polished world. Her thoughts were interrupted by the low purr of an engine. A Rolls-Royce Phantom, its black exterior gleaming like polish. Obsidian slowed to a stop beside her. Lisa's heart leapt into her throat. She quickened her pace, her instincts screaming that attention in Abu Dhabi meant trouble. For someone in her situation, a car like that could belong to the police, an immigration official, or worse, someone with intentions she didn't want to imagine. She hugged her backpack tighter, her fingers digging into the straps as she kept. Her eyes on the ground, the tinted windows slid down, revealing a man in his late 30s. His sharp features were softened by a neatly trimmed beard, and his dark eyes held a commanding intensity. He wore a pristine white thobe, the traditional Emirati robe with a red and white checkered headscarf framing his face. A faint smile played on his lips, but it was the kind of smile that held secrets. "Excuse me," he said, his voice smooth and accented, yet fluent in English. "May I have a moment of your time?" Lisa froze, her pulse racing. Every fiber of her being told her to run, but her legs refused to move. She glanced at the man, then at the car, calculating her options. "I don't want any trouble," she said, her voice barely audible over the hum of the city. The man's smile widened, a blend of charm and calculation. "No trouble, I assure you. My name is Khalid Al-Mansour." I couldn't help but notice. You seem out of place here." The words stung, though Lisa knew they were true. Her worn clothes, her tired posture, her very existence in this city of wealth screamed that she didn't belong. "I'm just passing through," she lied, hoping to deflect his interest. She took a step back, ready to bolt if needed. Khalid tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "You're American, yes. Your beauty is striking, like something from a painting. I host gatherings at my home cultural events, you might say. I'm looking for a dancer, someone with grace and presence." "You have both. Would you consider performing for me?" Lisa blinked, caught off guard. A job offer? It sounded like something out of a fairy tale, and fairy tales didn't exist in her world. She'd taken dance classes as a teenager, jazz, a bit of ballet, but she was no professional. "I'm not a dancer," she said cautiously. "I've never done anything like that." "No training is needed," Khalid replied, his tone reassuring yet firm. "Just natural talent. I saw it in the way you move even now. My home is a place of art and beauty. You'd be perfect. And, of course, you'd be well compensated." The word compensated hit Lisa like a lifeline thrown to a drowning swimmer. She thought of the overdue rent, the constant hunger, the fear of being caught by the authorities. A job, even one as vague as this, could mean survival. But Khalid's gaze unsettled her. It wasn't just interest, it was something deeper, possessive, as if he'd already decided she was his to claim. Her mind raced with warnings from the women she lived with, stories of rich men who offered salvation only to demand everything in return. "What kind of dancing?" she asked, stalling for time. "Traditional, modern, whatever you feel," Khalid said, waving a hand as if the details were unimportant. "My guests appreciate beauty in all its forms. Come to my palace tomorrow evening. We'll discuss the details. I'll send a car for you." He reached out, offering a sleek black card with gold embossing, his name and a phone number printed in elegant script. Lisa's fingers hesitated before taking the card. It felt heavy, like it carried the weight of a decision she wasn't ready to make. "I don't even know where I'd be going," she said, her voice wavering. "My home is in Al Bayton," Khalid replied, his eyes softening, but with a glint of amusement. "Not far from here. A car will pick you up at 7. "What's your name?" "Lisa," she said, instantly regretting it. Giving her name felt like surrendering a piece of herself, a step closer to whatever game Khalid was playing. "Lisa." He repeated, as if savoring the word. "A beautiful name for a beautiful woman. I look forward to seeing you." The window rolled up, and the Rolls Royce glided away, leaving Lisa alone on the sidewalk, the card burning in her hand. That night, in the dim light of her shared room, Lisa sat on her thin mattress, staring at the card. The other women, all immigrants like her, warned her about men like Khalid. "They don't give without taking," one said, her voice heavy with experience. But Lisa's desperation was a louder voice. She thought of her parents, her little brother, the bills piling up back home. She dialed the number, her voice trembling, as she confirmed the pickup dot the next evening. A Mercedes arrived, its driver a silent man in a crisp suit. Lisa, in her only clean outfit, a simple black dress she'd bought secondhand, felt like an imposter as she slid into the leather seat. The car wove through Abu Dhabi's glittering streets, past mosques with towering minarets and hotels that looked like palaces. They arrived at a gated estate in Al Bayton, where palm trees lined a driveway leading to a mansion that glowed against the night sky. The palace was a marvel of white marble and gold, its domes and arches a testament to wealth and tradition. A maid led Lisa through halls adorned with mosaics and chandeliers, the air scented with oud and roses. Soft music drifted from somewhere deep within, and Lisa's heart pounded. This was a world she didn't belong in, yet here she was, stepping into the unknown dot in a grand room. Khalid stood to greet her, his presence commanding yet warm. "Welcome, Lisa," he said, gesturing to a plush divan. "Tonight, you'll see what my world has to offer, and soon you'll be part of it." Lisa forced a smile, clutching her bag. She was here for a job, she told herself. Just a job. But as Khalid's eyes lingered, she felt the weight of something far greater, a game she wasn't sure she could win. Lisa Bennett stepped into the grand hall of Khalid Al-Mansour's palace, her breath catching in her throat. The sheer opulence of the place was overwhelming. Marble floors gleamed under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers, their prisms scattering light like 1,000 tiny stars. Intricate mosaics adorned the walls, depicting scenes of desert caravans and ancient Arabian tales, their colors so vibrant they seemed to pulse with life. The air carried the rich scent of wood, mingling with the faint sweetness of rosewater, and a distant melody, played on a traditional oud, drifted through the space. Lisa's second-hand black dress felt like a betrayal of the grandeur around her, and she clutched her backpack tightly, as if it could anchor her in this alien world. Khalid, standing at the far end of the room, gestured for her to approach. His white robe flowed as he moved, and his dark eyes held that same commanding intensity she'd noticed on the street. "Welcome, Lisa," he said, his voice warm but laced with authority. "This is your new home for as long as you choose to. Tay, come, sit." He indicated a plush divan covered in deep crimson silk, flanked by gold-embroidered cushions. Lisa hesitated and sat, her posture stiff. The divan was softer than anything she'd ever touched, a stark contrast to the thin mattress she'd slept on for months. "I don't know what you expect from me," she said, her voice steady despite the nerves twisting in her stomach. "I told you I'm not a professional dancer. I don't even know if I can do what you're asking." Khalid's smile was reassuring, but there was a glint in his eyes that made her uneasy. "You underestimate yourself, Lisa. I saw the way you moved on the street. There's natural grace in you. My guests appreciate beauty, and you have it in abundance. Tonight, you'll simply observe. Tomorrow will begin." Lisa nodded, unsure what begin meant, but too overwhelmed to press for details. A maid appeared, a young woman in a modest black uniform, carrying a silver tray with a teapot and delicate porcelain cups. She poured a fragrant tea, its steam curling in the air, and offered Lisa a plate of dates and pastries. Lisa's mouth watered. She hadn't seen food this inviting in months, but she took only a single date, afraid of seeming greedy. Khalid watched her, his expression unreadable as they sipped tea. Khalid explained his vision. "My gatherings are celebrations of culture," he said. "Music, poetry, dance, they bring people together. My guests are influential businessmen, diplomats, artists. You'll perform for them, a dance that reflects your spirit. It doesn't need to be traditional, just authentic." His words were smooth, but Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that he was selling her something more than a job. After tea, the maid, whose name was Amina, led Lisa to a guest suite that felt like a palace within a palace. The room was larger than her entire shared apartment back in the city, with a 4-poster bed draped in silk, a balcony overlooking a courtyard of fountains, and a bathroom with a sunken tub that could fit 5 people. Amina laid out a set of clothes-flowing silk pants and a beaded top, clearly meant for dancing. "These are for you," she said softly, her English accented but clear. The master chose them himself. Lisa ran her fingers over the fabric, its softness a luxury she'd never known. "Thank you," she murmured, but Amina's eyes held a flicker of something pity, perhaps, or caution. "Be careful," Amina whispered before leaving. "This place, It changes people. The words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning Lisa couldn't yet grasp. That night, Lisa barely slept. The bed was too soft, the silence too deep. Her mind raced with questions. What did Khalid really want? Was this job a lifeline or a trap? She thought of her family, her parents struggling to keep their home, her little brother who dreamed of college but had no way to pay for it. She'd come to Abu Dhabi to help them, but now she was the one who needed saving. The promise of money, of stability, was too tempting to ignore. But Amina's warning echoed in her thoughts. The next morning, Amina returned with breakfast, a spread of flatbreads, hummus, fresh fruits, and coffee so rich it made Lisa's head spin. After eating, she was led to a private studio, its walls lined with mirrors and its floor cushioned with mats. A woman in her 40s, introduced as Noor, a dance instructor, greeted her. Noor's stern face softened as she assessed Lisa. "You're not trained, but you have potential," she said. "We'll start with simple movements. Let your body tell a story." For hours, Noor guided Lisa through basic steps, blending traditional Arabic dance with modern elements. Lisa's muscles ached, but she found herself losing herself in the rhythm of the music. A haunting melody played on a kanan, a stringed instrument that filled the room with its plaintive notes. She moved hesitantly at first, self-conscious, under Noor's watchful eye, but as the hours passed, she felt a spark of confidence. Dancing reminded her of her teenage years when she'd poured her heart into jazz classes, dreaming of a stage she'd never reached. That evening, Khalid hosted a small gathering, a preview of the larger events to come. Lisa was told to observe, not perform, and she sat in a corner of the grand hall, dressed in the silk outfit Amina had provided. The room was filled with men in tailored suits and women in elegant abayas, their laughter and conversation mingling. With the clink of glasses, a group of musicians played, and a pair of dancers professionals Lisa assumed moved with a grace that made her feel inadequate. She watched Khalid work the room, his charm effortless as he greeted each guest. But his eyes kept finding her, lingering in a way that sent a shiver down her spine as the night wore on. Lisa caught glimpses of Khalid's world. The guests spoke of oil deals, art collections, and private jets, their wealth as palpable as the gold that adorned the room. But there was something else, a hierarchy, a power dynamic she couldn't quite place. The women, even those who seemed powerful, deferred to the men in subtle ways. Lisa noticed a group of women seated apart, their faces veiled, their presence almost ghostly. Amina, serving drinks, whispered to her, "Those are his wives. You'll meet them soon." The revelation hit Lisa like a punch. Wives, plural. She'd heard of polygamy, of course, but seeing it up close was different. She counted 8 women, their ages ranging from young to middle-aged, their expressions a mix of resignation and pride. They didn't mingle with the guests, and their seats were positioned behind Khalid, as if they were part of the decor. Lisa's stomach churned. Was this what Khalid expected of her? To become another ornament in his palace? After the guests left, Khalid approached her, his smile warm but calculated. "What did you think?" he asked, sitting beside her. "This is only a taste of what's to come. You'll shine here, Lisa. I can see it." "I'm not sure. Cut out for this," she admitted, her voice trembling. "It's overwhelming." He leaned closer, his voice low. "You're stronger than you think. This world can be yours if you embrace it. Tomorrow you'll dance for me. Just me. Show me what you've learned." Lisa nodded, her throat tight. She wanted to ask about the wives, about the rules of this place, but the words wouldn't come. As she returned to her suite, Amina's warning echoed again. This place changes people. Lisa lay awake, staring at the ornate ceiling, her mind a tangle of fear and hope. The palace was a gilded cage, its beauty masking something darker. Lisa Bennett stood in the mirrored dance studio, her body moving to the rhythm of a haunting kanun melody that filled the air. The silk pants and beaded top she wore shimmered under the soft lights, their weight unfamiliar but luxurious against her skin. Her dance instructor, Noor, watched with a critical eye, occasionally nodding in approval as Lisa executed a series of steps, a blend of traditional Arabic movements and the jazz techniques she'd learned as a teenager. Sweat beaded on her forehead, not just from the physical exertion, but from the pressure of performing in Khalid Al-Mansour's palace, a place where every gesture seemed to carry unspoken expectations. It had been 3 days since she'd arrived, and each moment felt like a test she wasn't sure she could pass. The studio was a sanctuary of sorts, a place where Lisa could lose herself in movement, if only for a few hours. But even here she felt Khalid's presence, though he wasn't in the room. His gaze seemed to linger in the mirrors, in the way the maids watched her, in the whispers that followed her through the palace's labyrinthine halls. Last night's gathering had left her unsettled, the sight of Khalid's 8 wives, seated, like silent statues behind him, had planted a seed of fear. She'd come here for a job, for a chance to escape the hunger and fear of her life on the streets of Abu Dhabi. But the palace, with its opulent beauty, was beginning to feel like a trap. Noor clapped her hands, signaling the end of the session. "You're improving," she said, her tone clipped but not unkind. "The master will be pleased. He wants you to perform for him tonight, alone. Be ready by 8. She handed Lisa a bottle of water and left, her footsteps echoing in the vast room. Lisa sank onto a cushioned mat, her muscles aching. Alone for the first time that day, she let her thoughts wander. She thought of her family in Ohio, her father, still recovering from heart surgery, her mother working double shifts at a diner, her little brother, Jake, who sent her hopeful texts she couldn't always answer. She'd come to Abu Dhabi to help them, to send money home, but now she was caught in a world she didn't understand. The money Khalid promised was her lifeline, but at what cost? Amina's warning, "This place changes people," echoed in her mind, growing louder with each passing day dot as evening approached. Amina appeared to escort Lisa to her suite. The maid's face was a mask of professionalism, but her eyes held that same flicker of caution Lisa had noticed before. "You'll wear this tonight," Amina said, laying out an emerald green outfit, its fabric even more intricate than the one Lisa had worn the previous night. The top was adorned with gold embroidery, and the pants flowed like liquid silk. The master chose it himself. Lisa nodded, her throat tight. "Amina," she said quietly, "what's it like for his wives? I saw them last night. They didn't seem happy." Amina hesitated, glancing at the door as if checking for eavesdroppers. "They have everything closed, jewels, comfort. But they don't have freedom. They live for him, not for themselves. Be careful, Lisa. The master is kind, but he is also possessive." The words sent a chill down Lisa's spine. She wanted to ask more, but Amina hurried away, leaving her. To prepare, Lisa dressed, her hands trembling as she adjusted the outfit. The mirror reflected a version of herself she barely recognized, elegant, poised, but still an outsider. She practiced her steps in her head, trying to focus on the dance. But her thoughts kept drifting to the wives, to Khalid, to the life she was stepping into. At 8, Amina led her to a smaller, more intimate room than the grand hall of the previous night. The space was lit by lanterns, their golden light casting intricate shadows on the walls. A low table held a spread of fruits, pastries, and a decanter of what looked like rosewater. Khalid sat on a cushioned divan, his thobe pristine, his expression warm but unreadable. "Lisa," he said, standing to greet her. "You look exquisite. Please dance for me." Lisa's heart pounded as she took her place in the center of the room. A musician in the corner began playing a slow, hypnotic melody on an A flute. She closed her eyes, letting the music guide her. Her movements were tentative at first, but as the rhythm enveloped her, she found her flow, her body weaving a story of longing and resilience. Khalid watched, his eyes never leaving her, and for a moment, she felt powerful, as if she could control this moment, this man, this world. When the music stopped, Khalid clapped softly, his smile genuine. "Beautiful," he said. "You have A gift, Lisa. You'll be the star of my next gathering. He gestured for her to sit beside him, pouring her a glass of rose water. But first we need to talk. Lisa sat, her guard up. The intimacy of the setting, the dim light, the soft cushions, his proximity made her uneasy. About what? She asked, sipping the drink to steady her nerves. Khalid leaned back, his expression shifting to something colder, more calculated. I've looked into you, Lisa Bennett. You're out here legally, are you? No visa, no work permit. You're a ghost in my country. The words hit her like a physical blow. Her glass trembled in her hand, and she set it down, her mind racing. How did you know? She'd been so careful, avoiding checkpoints, keeping her head down. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, but her voice betrayed her fear. Don't lie to me, Khalid said, his tone sharp but not angry. I have resources, Lisa. I know you're undocumented. You've been living in a rundown room, scraping by on nothing. You're vulnerable, and I can change that. I will change that. Lisa's chest tightened. What do you want? She asked. Though she dreaded the answer. I want you to stay, he said, his voice softening but laced with intent. Not just as a dancer, but as my wife, my ninth wife. You'll have everything: wealth, security, a place in my world. In return, you'll belong to me. The room seemed to shrink around her. Wife. She thought of the women she'd seen last night, their silent presence, their veiled faces. I came here to dance, she said, her voice shaking. Not to marry you. Khalid's eyes narrowed. You don't have a choice, Lisa. If you refuse, I'll report you to the authorities. You'll be deported, maybe imprisoned. Your family in America, your parents, your brother, the nothing. But if you accept, they'll never want for anything again. I'll make sure of it. Lisa felt the walls closing in. This was no offer, it was blackmail. Her mind scrambled for a way out, but there was none. She was trapped, a pawn in Khalid's game. You can't do this, she whispered, more to herself than to him. I can, he said simply, and I will. But I'm not a monster, Lisa. You'll live a life most women dream of. Think about it tonight. Tomorrow, we'll discuss the details. He stood, dismissing her with a nod. Amina appeared to escort her back to her suite, her face unreadable dot in her room. Lisa collapsed onto the bed, tears stinging her eyes. She thought of her family, of the freedom she'd already lost, of the life Khalid was offering, a life of luxury, but at the cost of her soul. She wanted to run, to disappear into the desert night, but where could she go? She was illegal, alone, and now at the mercy of a man who held her future in his hands. As she lay there staring at the ornate ceiling, she felt the weight of his words. You'll belong to me. The palace, once a beacon of hope, was now a prison, and Lisa wasn't sure. She'd never find a way out. Lisa Bennett sat on the edge of the silk-draped bed in her palatial suite, her hands trembling as she stared at the emerald green dance outfit folded neatly on a nearby chair. The memory of Khalid Al-Mansour's ultimatum from the previous night burned in her mind. Marry him as his ninth wife or face deportation, a choice that wasn't a choice at all. The palace, with its marble halls and golden chandeliers, had transformed from a beacon of hope into a gilded cage overnight. She felt like a bird with clipped wings, beautiful but trapped, her freedom bartered for survival. Yet she had no time to dwell tonight. Khalid expected her to join him again, not to dance, but to prove her worth in a different way. He'd hinted at wanting something more personal, something that would bind her to him beyond a contract. Lisa's reflection in the ornate mirror showed a woman she barely recognized. Her chestnut hair brushed to a glossy sheen by Amina. The maid cascaded over her shoulders, and her turquoise eyes, though shadowed with worry, sparkled in the soft light. She was beautiful. She knew that, but her beauty felt like a curse now. The very thing that had drawn Khalid's attention and landed her in this predicament. She thought of her family in Ohio, her parents drowning in debt. Her brother, Jake, whose dreams of college depended on her. She couldn't let them down. But the cost of saving them was her own soul. Amina knocked softly before entering, carrying a tray of tea and dates. Her face, usually a mask of professionalism, softened with concern. "You didn't eat breakfast," she said, setting the tray down. "You need strength for tonight. What does he want from me now?" Lisa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "He already has my answer. I'll marry him. What else is there?" Amina hesitated, glancing at the door. "The master is captivated by you, Lisa. He wants more than your hand. He wants your spirit. Tonight, he asks that you share a story, something to entertain him. He loves tales, especially those of old Arabia. Be careful, every word you speak binds you tighter to him." Lisa frowned. A story? It seemed trivial compared to the weight of his blackmail, but Amina's warning suggested it was anything but. "I don't know any Arabian stories," she admitted. "I'm not from here." "I'll make a fool of myself. Then tell him something from your heart," Amina said. "It'll see through a lie, and Lisa." She paused, her voice dropping. "He's not like other men. His beauty hides a will of iron. Don't let his face fool you." Lisa nodded, her mind racing. She'd noticed Khalid's striking appearance. Last night, his chiseled jaw, framed by a neatly trimmed beard. His dark eyes that seemed to hold the desert's secrets, and a smile that could charm the stars from the sky. He was breathtakingly handsome, a man whose looks could make any woman's heart skip a beat. But his beauty only deepened her unease, like a predator cloaked in a lure, making his power over her all the more dangerous. That evening, Amina dressed her in a sapphire blue gown, its fabric flowing like water, adorned with silver embroidery that caught the light. Lisa felt like a doll being prepared for display, but she steeled herself. If Khalid wanted a story, she'd give him one, a way to buy time, to keep him at arm's length while she figured out how to navigate this nightmare. She followed Amina to a private courtyard, a lush oasis of palm trees and fountains, lit by lanterns that cast a golden glow. Khalid waited on a cushioned divan, his thobe pristine, his presence commanding. His beauty struck her anew, his features sculpted, his posture regal, a man who could have stepped from a myth. But his eyes, warm yet piercing, reminded her of the trap she was in. "Lisa," he said, his voice smooth as velvet, rising to greet her. "You look like a vision. Sit with me." He gestured to a cushion beside him, and Lisa obeyed, her heart pounding. A servant poured rosewater into delicate glasses, and a musician played a soft melody on a canon, the notes weaving through the night air. "I'm told you want a story," Lisa said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm not sure I know what you're looking for." Khalid leaned back, his smile disarming. "Surprise me. In my culture, stories are power. They bind us, teach us, enchant us. Tell me something that reveals who you are." Lisa took a deep breath, her mind scrambling. She remembered a book she'd read as a child, The Arabian Nights, a collection of tales her mother used to read to her at bedtime. One story stood out, Scheherazade, the woman who saved herself by weaving tales for a king. The irony wasn't lost on her. She decided to try adapting the story to fit her own voice, her own truth. "Once in a land of sand and stars," she began, her voice tentative but growing stronger. "There was a woman named Scheherazade whose life hung by a thread. She was clever, braver than she knew, and faced a king who demanded her obedience. But she had a gift, her stories. Each night, she spun a tale so captivating that the king spared her, eager for the next. Her words were her shield, her sword, her hope." As Lisa spoke, she wove details from her own life into the tale. Scheherazade's fear mirrored her own. Her longing for freedom echoed Lisa's dreams of returning to her family. She described the king not as cruel but as complex, a man torn between tradition and desire, much like she imagined Khalid. The courtyard seemed to fade, the world narrowing to her voice and Khalid's gaze. He listened, utterly still, his eyes locked on her, as if she were the only thing in the universe. When she paused, leaving the story unfinished, Khalid clapped softly, his face alight with admiration. "Remarkable," he said. "You have a gift, Lisa. Your voice, your spirit, it's more than I expected. Continue tomorrow night." "I want to hear what happens next." Lisa nodded, relief flooding her. She'd bought herself another day, another chance to keep him at bay. But as they sipped rosewater, Khalid's hand brushed hers, a deliberate touch that sent a shiver through her. "You're more than a dancer," he said, his voice low. "You're a treasure, and I protect what's mine." The words, meant as a compliment, felt like chains. Lisa forced a smile, but her mind churned. She was playing a dangerous game, enchanting a man who held her life in his hands. Yet, as she met his gaze, she felt a flicker of something else attraction, unwanted but undeniable. His beauty, his intensity, stirred something in her, a pull she fought to ignore. She couldn't afford to feel anything for him, not when her freedom was at stake each night that week. Lisa returned to the courtyard, spinning more of Scheherazada's tales. She drew on her memories, her imagination, pouring her heart into the stories. Khalid was captivated, his laughter and applause growing warmer, his touches lingering longer. She saw glimpses of a man beyond the blackmailer, a man who loved art, who spoke of his childhood in the desert with a wistful smile. But she never forgot the power he held, the wives who lived in his shadow, the life he demanded she accept. By the seventh night, Lisa felt the weight of her performance. Her stories were keeping her alive, but they were also binding her to Khalid. She ended that night's tale with Scheherazade facing a choice freedom or love. Khalid's eyes gleamed as he leaned closer. "You're Scheherazade, aren't you?" he said softly. "Clever, brave, enchanting. But unlike her king, I won't let you go." Lisa's heart raced. She was winning his admiration, but at what cost? As she returned to her suite, Amina's words echoed. "His beauty hides a will of iron." Lisa knew she had to keep telling stories, not just to survive, but to find a way out. But the line between survival and surrender was blurring, and she wasn't sure how long she could walk it. Lisa Bennett paced the marble floor of her suite, the silk of her sapphire gown whispering against her legs. The opulence of Khalid Al-Mansour's palace, its golden chandeliers, intricate mosaics, and rose-scented air had become a familiar. Prison. 2 weeks had passed since she'd accepted his blackmail, agreeing to become his ninth wife to avoid deportation. Each night, she spun tales of Scheherazade in the lantern-lit courtyard, enchanting Khalid with stories that bought her. Time but tightened the invisible chains binding her to him. His beauty, undeniable and magnetic, made her predicament even more perilous. With his chiseled jaw, dark eyes that seemed to hold the desert's mysteries, and a smile that could unravel any resolve, Khalid was a man whose allure was as dangerous as his power. Lisa's stories had earned her a fragile trust, a reprieve from immediate marriage preparations, but she knew it wouldn't last. Khalid's touches grew bolder, his hand lingering on hers, his gaze intense and possessive. He spoke of their future as if it were inevitable, describing a life of luxury where she'd want for nothing. But Lisa saw the truth in the silent presence of his 8 wives, women who lived in comfort but without freedom, their lives dictated by Khalid's whims. She couldn't become one of them, a bird in a gilded cage, cut off from her family in Ohio and her own dreams. She had to escape, no matter the cost. The idea of fleeing had taken root the night Khalid revealed his knowledge of her undocumented status. It grew with each story she told, each glance at the palace's guarded gates. But escaping Abu Dhabi was no simple task. She had no passport, no money, and no legal standing. The city's glittering streets were patrolled by police who could arrest her on sight. Even if she reached the U.S. Embassy, her lack of documentation might land her in a detention center. Yet, the alternative, surrendering her life to Khalid, was unthinkable. She needed a plan, and she needed allies. Lisa's first step was to understand the palace's rhythms. She observed the maids, the guards, the daily routines. Amina, the young maid who had warned her about Khalid's possessive nature, was her closest confidant, though their interactions were brief and cautious. Lisa began asking his subtle questions during their morning tea deliveries. "How do people leave the palace?" she asked one day, keeping her tone casual. "I mean, for errands or visits?" Amina's eyes flickered with understanding. Only with permission, she said quietly. The master's drivers take us where we need to go. The gates are always watched. Why do you ask? Just curious. Lisa lead, forcing a smile. It's so different from home. Amina didn't press, but her glance suggested she knew more than she let on. Lisa sensed Amina might be an ally, but trust was a risk she couldn't yet afford. Her second step was to learn about Khalid's wives. She'd seen them at gatherings, seated behind him like silent ornaments, their faces veiled or expressionless. If anyone understood the palace's secrets, it was them. During a rare moment when she was allowed to join them for tea in a private garden, Lisa studied them. The eldest, Fatima, was in her 50s, her eyes sharp but weary. The youngest, Nora, barely 20, seemed nervous, her fingers twisting the hem of her abaya. The others varied in age and demeanor, but all shared a quiet resignation. Lisa wondered if any of them had ever tried to leave. Nora, seated beside her, offered a shy smile. "You're the new dancer," she said softly. "The master speaks? Of you often? He says you're special." Lisa's stomach twisted. "I'm just trying to do my job," she said, keeping her voice neutral. "What's it like, being his wife?" Nora's smile faded. "It's a good life," she said, but her tone lacked conviction. "We have everything we need, but we don't leave without him. We don't choose much." She glanced at the other wives, who were engrossed in their own conversation, and lowered her voice. "I miss my family in Dubai. I haven't seen them in a year." Lisa's heart ached. Nora's words mirrored her own fears, losing contact with her parents, her brother, her life. "Do you ever think about visiting them?" she asked carefully. Nora's eyes widened, and she shook her head. "It's not allowed. The master decides." "Be careful, Lisa. Questions like that, they're noticed." The warning was clear, but Nora's vulnerability gave Lisa hope. If one wife felt trapped, others might too. She began seeking moments to talk with Nora, offering small confidences to build trust. She shared stories of her childhood in Ohio, careful not to reveal her undocumented status. Nora, in turn, spoke of her dreams of studying fashion, dreams abandoned when she married Khalid at 18. Their conversations were fleeting, stolen during meals or walks in the garden, but they planted the seeds of a bond. Lisa's plan took shape in fragments. She needed to reach the U.S. Embassy, but first, she had to get past the palace gates. She noticed the laundry deliveries arrived every Tuesday, a van driven by an older man who didn't seem to check the cargo closely. If she could hide in the van, she might reach the city undetected. From there, she'd need money for a taxi to the embassy. She had none, but Khalid had given her a gold bracelet after one of her storytelling nights, a gesture that felt like a claim. She could pawn it, though finding a discreet buyer in Abu Dhabi would be another hurdle. The biggest obstacle was timing. Khalid's attention was relentless. His nightly requests for stories kept her in his orbit, and his beauty made it harder to stay detached. Last night, as she'd spun a tale of Scheherazade outwitting a jinn, he'd leaned close, his cologne a heady mix of sandalwood and spice. "You're extraordinary," he'd said, his voice low, his eyes tracing her face. "I could listen to you forever." His words, meant to flatter, felt like a threat, and yet her traitorous heart fluttered. She hated herself for feeling anything for a man who'd blackmailed her. But his charisma was a force she couldn't ignore. Lisa pushed the thought aside, focusing on her escape. She began hiding small items, a scarf, a pair of plain clothes in a corner of her suite, preparing to disguise herself. She practiced her story for the embassy, a half-truth about losing her passport during travel. But doubts gnawed at her. What if the embassy couldn't help? What if Khalid found her first? His resources were vast, his reach seemingly endless. She'd heard whispers among the maids about his influentitions. Police, even foreign diplomats, owed him favors. One afternoon, as she sat with Nora in the garden, Lisa took a risk. "If you could leave, would you?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the fountain's trickle. Nora froze, her eyes darting to the nearby guards. "Don't say that," she whispered. You don't know what he'd do. He's kind, but if you cross him, she trailed off, fear in her eyes. But then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. I'd go to my family. But it's impossible. Lisa's heart raced. Nora wasn't ready to help, but she wasn't loyal to Khalid either. It was a start. That night, as she told Khalid another story, she watched him closely, noting his guards' positions, the way he dismissed them with a wave. His beauty, his sculpted features, his effortless charm distracted her, but she forced herself to focus. She was Scheherazade, not just surviving, but plotting, weaving a tale of escape with every word she spoke. Lisa Bennett sat in a lantern-lit courtyard, her voice weaving another chapter of Scheherazade's tale under the star-strewn Abu Dhabi sky. The air was warm, scented with jasmine and the faint smokiness of wood, and the gentle trickle of a nearby fountain blended with the qanun's haunting notes. Across from her, Khalid Al-Mansour reclined on a cushioned divan, his strikingly handsome features illuminated by the golden glow. His chiseled jaw, framed by a perfectly groomed beard, and his dark eyes, which seemed to hold both the desert's vastness and an unspoken promise, made him a vision of allure that Lisa struggled to ignore. His white thobe flowed with effortless elegance, accentuating his regal presence. 3 weeks had passed since his blackmail forced her to agree to become his 9th wife, and each night of storytelling had drawn them closer, a dangerous dance of power and enchantment. Lisa's latest tale described Scheherazade outwitting a cunning vizier, her words laced with her own defiance and longing for freedom. She poured her heart into the story, using it as a shield against Khalid's growing intensity. His gaze, warm yet possessive, followed her every gesture, and his applause at the tale's end was softer now, more intimate. "You're a marvel, Lisa," he said, his voice a low caress that sent an unwilling shiver down her spine. "Each night you reveal more of yourself. I could listen to you forever." The words, meant as praise, felt like a tightening noose. Lisa forced a smile, her hands clasped tightly in her lap to hide their trembling. She wore a crimson gown tonight, its gold embroidery catching the light, a gift from Khalid that felt more like a claim. Her beauty, which had once been her pride, was now a weapon he wielded, and his own breathtaking appearance, his sculpted features, his magnetic charm made her resistance falter. She hated the flicker of attraction that stirred in her, a betrayal of her resolve to escape the palace and reclaim her life. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "I'm glad you enjoy the stories." She sipped the rosewater he'd poured, buying time to steer the conversation away from herself. "Do you have stories from your childhood? Growing up here must have been different." Khalid's smile softened, a rare glimpse of vulnerability crossing his face. "The desert was my playground," he said, leaning closer. "My father took me to the dunes, taught me to ride camels, to read the stars. Life was simpler then, before the weight of wealth and duty." His eyes held hers, and for a moment, Lisa saw not the blackmailer, but a man shaped by a world she couldn't imagine. His beauty, softened by nostalgia, made her heart ache with a confusing mix of sympathy and fear. The moment passed, and his gaze sharpened. "But enough of me," he said, his hand brushing hers, a deliberate touch that sent a jolt through her. "You're my story now, Lisa. Soon you'll be my wife, and this palace will be your home." He leaned closer, his cologne a heady blend of sandalwood and spice, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I want you to want this life, not just accept it." Lisa's breath caught. His words, his proximity, his undeniable allure, they were a trap, and she was teetering on its edge. She pulled her hand away, masking her unease with a polite nod. "I need time," she said, the lie tasting bitter. "It's all so new." Khalid studied her, his expression unreadable, then nodded. "Time, then, not forever." He stood, offering his hand to help her rise. She took it, her skin tingling at the contact, and cursed herself for the warmth that spread through her. As Amina escorted her back to her suite, Lisa's mind raced. Her escape plan hiding in the laundry van, reaching the US Embassy, was still forming, but Khalid's growing affection complicated everything. She couldn't afford to feel anything for him, yet her, traitor that it was, refused to obey Dot in her suite. Lisa collapsed onto the silk-draped bed, staring at the ornate ceiling. She thought of Nora, the youngest of Khalid's wives, whose whispered confessions of longing for her family had forged a fragile bond between them. Yesterday, in the garden, Nora had admitted she'd once tried to contact her sister in Dubai, only to be caught and confined to the palace for a month. "He loves us," Nora had said, her voice hollow, "but his love is a cage." Lisa saw her own future in Nora's words, and it terrified her. But Nora's trust was a lifeline, a potential ally in her escape, if she could nurture it. Without raising suspicion the next morning, Lisa sought Nora during a rare moment alone in the women's quarters, a lush room of cushions and tapestries where the wives gathered. Nora, her delicate features framed by a pale blue hijab, looked up from her embroidery, her eyes wary but curious. "You're brave," Nora said softly. "The way you speak to him, the stories you tell. I could never be so bold." Lisa sat beside her, keeping her voice low. "I'm not brave," she said. "I'm just surviving. Like you." She hesitated, then added, "If you could see your family again, what would you say to them?" Nora's eyes glistened. "I'd tell them I'm sorry, that I miss them. But it's impossible. He'd never allow it." She glanced at the other wives, who were chatting nearby, and leaned closer. "Why do you ask? You're planning something, aren't you?" Lisa's heart skipped. She'd been too obvious. "I just miss my family too," she said, deflecting. "I thought you might understand." Nora nodded, but her gaze lingered, as if she sensed the truth. Lisa knew she'd have to be more careful, but the connection with Nora was her best hope. That night, as Lisa told another story in the courtyard, she felt Khalid's attention like a physical weight. His beauty, his dark hair catching the lantern light, his smile both tender and commanding drew her in, even as she fought to stay detached. The tale she spun was darker. Scheherazade facing a test of loyalty, a mirror of Lisa's own struggle. When she finished, Khalid rose, crossing the space between them in a single fluid motion. Before she could react, he cupped her face, his touch gentle but possessive, his eyes searching hers. "You're stealing my heart, Lisa," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "I've never felt this for anyone. You're different." He leaned closer, and for a heart-stopping moment, she thought he'd kiss her. Her body froze, torn between pulling away and the shocking urge to lean in. She stepped back, her breath ragged, and murmured an excuse about needing rest in her suite. Lisa pressed her hands to her face, her cheeks burning. She was falling for him despite everything, his blackmail, his control, his world that would swallow her whole. It was madness, a betrayal of her plan, her family, herself. She thought of her escape, the laundry van, the embassy, but now it felt distant, clouded by the memory of Khalid's touch, his voice, his beauty that seemed to rewrite her resolve. The next day, a new shock came. During her morning tea, Lisa felt a wave of nausea, her stomach churning. She dismissed it as stress, but when it persisted, Amina noticed, her eyes narrowing. "You're pale," she said, handing her a glass of water. "Have you been with the master?" Lisa shook her head vehemently. "No, never. It's just nerves." But Amina's words planted a seed of fear. Later, alone, Lisa counted the days and realized her period was late. Panic gripped her. She couldn't be pregnant. She hadn't been intimate with Khalid. But the possibility, however impossible, sent her spiraling. She needed to escape now, before her body betrayed her further. Before Khalid's passion consumed her completely, she sought Nora again, risking a bolder question. If someone wanted to leave, how would they do it? She whispered, her eyes pleading. Nora hesitated, then murmured, "The laundry van. It's the only way out unchecked." "But you'd need help." It was confirmation Lisa needed, but Nora's fear suggested she wasn't ready to act. Lisa would have to move alone, and soon before her heart or her body made escape impossible. Lisa sat in the opulent confines of her suite, her hands pressed against her abdomen, as if she could will away the truth growing inside her. The nausea that had plagued her for days had been confirmed by Amina, who, with a knowing glance and a discreet visit to a palace physician, revealed that Lisa was pregnant. The news hit like a sandstorm, obliterating her carefully laid plans for escape. She hadn't been intimate with Khalid Al-Mansour, her knights of storytelling, had kept him at a distance, but the physician's tests were undeniable. Lisa's mind reeled, grasping at impossible explanations. A mix-up, a mistake, or some miracle she couldn't fathom. Yet, the reality was inescapable. She carried Khalid's child. A boy, the first heir to a man whose beauty and power had ensnared her. In a world she both feared and, against her will, began to crave, Khalid's palace, with its marble halls, golden chandeliers, and rose-scented air, had become a labyrinth of contradictions. 4 weeks had passed since Lisa's storytelling began. Each night in the lantern-lit courtyard, drawing her deeper into Khalid's orbit. His breathtaking appearance, his chiseled features, dark eyes that shimmered like the desert night, and a smile that could melt resolve made her struggle to maintain her defiance. His blackmail, forcing her to agree to become his ninth wife, loomed over her, but his growing passion, raw and unguarded, complicated her resolve. She'd felt herself falling, her heart betraying her with every touch, every whispered word. Now, with a child binding her to him, escape seemed like a fading mirage. Lisa's plan to flee via the laundry van had stalled. Nora, Khalid's youngest wife and her tentative ally, had confirmed the van's potential as an escape route, but her fear of Khalid's wrath made her hesitant to help. Lisa had hidden a scarf and plain clothes, ready to disguise herself, but the pregnancy changed everything. She couldn't risk her child's safety, nor could she ignore the strange pull she felt toward Khalid, a man whose beauty and charisma were matched only by his control. She hated him for his blackmail, yet his moments of tenderness, his laughter at her stories, his stories of his desert childhood had cracked her defenses. That morning, Amina brought tea, her eyes soft with concern. "The master must be told," she said, setting the tray down. "A child changes everything. He'll protect you, Lisa, but he'll also expect more." Lisa nodded, her throat tight. What does more mean? I'm already trapped. She thought of Khalid's 8 wives, their silent presence at gatherings, their lives dictated by his will. She couldn't become one of them, yet her child tied her to this world in ways she hadn't anticipated. Amina hesitated. He loves you in his way. His beauty draws people in, but his heart, it's rare for him to open it. Be careful, Lisa. A child will make him cling tighter. Lisa spent the day in turmoil, avoiding the dance studio and the garden where the wives gathered. She thought of her family in Ohio, her parents, struggling with debt, her brother, Jake, whose texts she hadn't answered in weeks. She'd come to Abu Dhabi to save them, but now she was the one who needed saving. The embassy, her last hope, felt unreachable, and the laundry van seemed a reckless gamble with the life growing inside her. That evening, Khalid summoned her, not to the courtyard, but to a private dining room, its walls adorned with tapestries depicting Arabian legends. He stood by a window, his silhouette framed against the twinkling lights of Abu Dhabi. His beauty struck her anew, his dark hair catching the lamplight, his thobe accentuating his broad shoulders, his face a masterpiece of symmetry and intensity. He turned, his smile warm but tinged with something new anticipation, perhaps, or triumph. "Lisa," he said, crossing the room to take her hands. "You look radiant tonight." Lisa forced a smile, her heart pounding. She wore a violet gown, its silver embroidery a gift from him, and her chestnut hair was loose, framing her face. Her beauty, which had drawn him to her, felt like a weapon turned against her. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady despite the news she carried. "Why here tonight? No stories." Khalid's eyes softened. but his grip on her hands tightened. "No stories," he said. "I wanted to speak as equals." "You've changed me, Lisa. I've never felt this for anyone, not my wives, not anyone. You were my heart's desire." He led her to a cushioned seat where a feast of lamb, saffron rice, and pastries awaited. But Lisa's appetite was gone, her mind fixed on the truth she had to reveal. They ate in silence at first, the clink of silverware loud in the intimate space. Khalid's gaze never left her, his beauty a constant distraction. Finally, she set down her fork, her resolve hardening. "Khalid," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm pregnant. It's a boy. Your heir." The words hung in the air, and Khalid's face transformed shock, then joy, then a fierce possessiveness that made her heart lurch. He rose, crossing to her in a single stride, and knelt before her, his hands cupping her face. "A son," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "My heir from you. This is a gift, Lisa, a sign we're meant to be." His eyes shimmering, with tears held hers, and for a moment she saw not the blackmailer, but a man overcome by love. Lisa's throat tightened. His beauty, his raw emotion, stirred something deep within her, a longing she fought to suppress. "I didn't plan this," she said, pulling back. "I'm scared. I don't know what this means for me." Khalid stood, his expression softening. "It means you're my future," he said. "You and our son will have everything. I'll protect you, Lisa, always." He paused, his gaze searching hers. "I know I pushed you, demanded too much, but this changes me. I want to be better for you, for him." The words were a balm, but Lisa's distrust lingered. She thought of his wives, confined to the palace, their freedom sacrificed for his love. Yet, as the weeks passed, Khalid began to change. He spent more time with her, not just at night, but during the day, walking with her in the garden, sharing stories of his dreams for their child. He was breathtakingly attentive, his beauty enhanced by a tenderness she hadn't seen before. He gifted her a sapphire necklace, its stones matching her eyes, and spoke of building a nursery adorned with stars. One evening, he surprised her with a phone call to her family. "Speak to them," he said, handing her a secure phone. "Tell them you're safe." Lisa's heart soared as she heard her mother's voice, her brother's laughter. She kept her situation vague, promising to send money soon, but the call was a lifeline, a reminder of why she fought to escape. Khalid watched, his smile gentle, and she felt a dangerous gratitude. The final shift came when Khalid declared her his first wife, a decision that sent shockwaves through the palace. At a gathering, he announced it publicly, his arm around her, his beauty commanding the room. "Lisa is my heart," he said, "and our son my heir. She stands above all." The other wives, seated behind, exchanged glances, some resentful, others resigned. Nora's eyes met Lisa's, a mix of envy and hope. And Lisa knew her bond with her might fray under this new hierarchy. Lisa's heart was a battlefield. Khalid's transformation, his love, his concessions made her question her escape. She loved her unborn child, and a part of her, however reluctant, loved Khalid too. His beauty, his passion, his promises of a future were intoxicating. But the palace's walls still loomed, and the wife's silent presence reminded her of the cost of his love. She held the scarf and clothes for her escape, hidden in her suite, but each day her resolve weakened, her heart pulling her toward a man she both feared and desired. Liz stood on the balcony of her suite, the warm Abu Dhabi night wrapping around her like a velvet cloak. Below, the palace's courtyard glowed with lanterns, their light dancing on the fountains that whispered secrets to the stars. Her hands rested on her slightly rounded abdomen, where Khalid Al-Mansour's her son grew, a life that tethered her to this opulent prison. 5 months had passed since she'd entered Khalid's world, drawn in by desperation and held by blackmail, only to find herself entangled in a love she hadn't anticipated. Khalid's breathtaking beauty, his chiseled jaw, dark eyes that held the desert's depth, and a smile that could unravel her resolve had become both her solace. and her torment. As his first wife, elevated above his 8 others, she wielded a power she'd never imagined. Yet the question of freedom haunted her every step. The palace, with its marble halls and rose-scented air, was a paradox of beauty and confinement. Khalid's transformation had been profound since learning of their son. He granted her a phone call to her family in Ohio, allowed her to send money to ease their debts, and declared her his primary wife, a move that shifted the palace's delicate hierarchy. His love was fierce, his attention unwavering, his beauty a constant reminder of why her heart wavered. Yet, the other wives' silent presence, Fatima's weary gaze, Nora's flickering hope reminded her of the cost. They lived in luxury but without autonomy, their lives orbiting Khalid's will. Lisa feared becoming one of them, even as her love for him grew, a tangled vine threatening to choke her dreams, her escape plan. Once a burning resolve had faded to embers. The laundry van, the U.S. Embassy, the scarf and plain clothes hidden in her suite, they were relics of a woman who believed freedom was a destination, not a choice. Pregnancy had grounded her, not just physically but emotionally. She couldn't risk her son's safety, nor could she ignore the bond she shared with Khalid. His nightly requests for Scheherazada's tales had evolved into conversations, moments where he bared his soul, his fears of failing his family, his dreams for their child. His beauty, softened by vulnerability, made her see the man beneath. The blackmailer, a man she loved despite herself. Yet, the palace's walls loomed. Lisa's new status as first wife came with privileges, more freedom to move within the palace, influence over its daily rhythms, but also scrutiny. The other wives watched her, some with resentment, others with curiosity. Nora, her closest ally, had grown distant since the announcement, her envy palpable. "You're his favorite," Nora had said last week, her voice tight. But favorites? Fall hardest. The warning echoed Amina's early caution. His beauty hides a will of iron. Lisa knew her position was fragile, her freedom conditional on Khalid's love. That morning, during a walk in the garden, Lisa had sought Nora, hoping to mend their bond. The younger wife sat by a fountain, her delicate features framed by a pale green hijab. "I didn't mean to hurt you," Lisa said, sitting beside her. "This wasn't my choice." Nora's eyes softened. "I know," she said, "but you have what I never will, his heart. Use it, Lisa, not for yourself, but for us. We're all trapped." The words struck deep. Lisa realized her role wasn't just about her own freedom, but about changing the world she inherited. For her son, for Nora, for all the wives. That evening, Khalid summoned her to the private dining room where he first learned of their son. He stood by the window, his thobe pristine, his beauty a vision that stole her breath, his dark hair catching the lamplight, his posture regal yet intimate. "Lisa," he said, crossing to her, his smile tender. "You grow more radiant every day." He took her hands, his touch igniting a warmth she fought to temper. Her violet gown, a gift from him, clung to her curves, her chestnut hair loose. Her turquoise eyes meeting his with a mix of love and defiance. They dined on lamb and saffron rice, the silence between them heavy with unspoken questions. Lisa knew she had to confront her future, not as Scheherazade weaving tales to survive, but as a woman claiming her path. "Khalid," she said, setting down her fork, "I love you. I didn't want to, but I do. But love isn't enough if I'm not free." Khalid's face tightened, his beauty shadowed by concern. "You're my first wife," he said. "You have more than any woman here. What more do you need?" "Choice," she said, her voice steady. "I want to see my family, not just call them. I want to walk the city without guards. I want our son to know a world where his mother isn't a prisoner, even a loved one." She paused, her heart racing. "And I want the other wives to have that too. Your love shouldn't be a cage." Khalid leaned back, his eyes searching hers. For a moment, she feared she'd pushed too far, that his will of iron would crush her hopes. But then he stood, crossing to the window, his silhouette a study in conflict. "You challenge me, Lisa," he said, his voice low. "No one else dares. I built this world to protect what's mine, but maybe I protected too tightly." The admission stunned her. Khalid turned, his beauty softened by a vulnerability she'd rarely seen. "I can't change everything," he said. "Tradition, my family, this city, they expect certain things. But for you, for our son, I'll try. You can visit your family. I'll arrange it, and the wives. I'll give them more freedom, within reason. But you, Lisa, you must stay. I can't lose you." Lisa's heart soared and sank in equal measure. His concessions were a victory, a crack in the palace's walls, but they came with a price: her commitment to him. She thought of her escape plan, the embassy, the life she dreamed of reclaiming. But that life felt distant now, overshadowed by her love for Khalid, her son, and the women whose lives she could influence. She rose, crossing to him, and took his hand. Her touch a bridge between their worlds. "I'll stay," she said, her voice breaking. "But not as a prisoner, as your partner. Promise me our son will know freedom, that I'll never be just another wife." Khalid pulled her close, his embrace fierce, his cologne a heady mix of sandalwood and spice. "I promise," he whispered, his lips brushing her forehead. "You're my heart, Lisa, always." In the months that followed, Lisa saw changes ripple through the palace. Khalid arranged her trip to Ohio, where she hugged her parents and brother, tears mingling with laughter. The wives were granted more autonomy. Fatima opened a charity. Noura began studying fashion online. Lisa, as first wife, became their advocate, her stories evolving from Scheherazada's tales to plans for a future where love and freedom coexisted. Her son, born under a desert moon, was named Zayn, a symbol of beauty and hope. Yet, as Lisa stood on her balcony, Zayn cradled in her arms. She knew freedom was a veil, delicate and hard-won. Khalid's love was her anchor, his beauty her muse, but the palace's walls still stood. She'd chosen this life, not just for herself, but for those she could lift. A Scheherazade who'd rewritten her ending not with escape, but with transformation. What did you think of the story? Rate it from 0 to 10 in the comments and drop an emoji that captures how you feel. Your thoughts mean the world to us, and we want to know which moment hit you hardest. Don't forget to share, and subscribe for more thrilling stories like this.